So our session is going to be devoted to the environment, basically, and to two components of the environment, which are biodiversity and climate change. And I think this is probably one of the most important sessions in the conference, because we are living in a very, very unstable and uncertain world. And the reasons for that, those are two. First of all, humans depend extremely abundantly on biodiversity, which we might call the natural capital of our Earth. At the same time, we're being subject to all the problems associated with climate change, which obviously has huge impacts on mankind, but it also has impacts on biodiversity itself. As a consequence, we're in a very complicated, vicious circle in terms of how the Earth is going to look the next time. Can I have the next, please? Next one. So, right now, science is extremely important in all this debacle that we're facing on the Earth. And it's important because we have two levels of problems. We have the global problem, which is basically relates to climate change, but we also have serious local problems, which are more related to the biodiversity domain. From the human point of view, it's very important that we know and understand the concept of adaptability, and that has more to do perhaps with the social scientists, whom are not represented in this particular workshop. And then, of course, we have the issue of social responsibility. What do we do about this? We can be scientists and be in our labs, but we don't do anything about it, things are not going to be changing. The next, please. And the last point to just introduce the workshop is that I think it's important to ask why it's so important that we actually educate children about these issues. And there's a very simple answer. When I'm not there, and most of the speakers, not many of the speakers are not there today, children will be in a totally different world that we're in today. So if school children all over the world are not taught about these issues and understand them well, we're going to be in a very difficult situation. So basically what I'm saying is the young generation are going to have to carry a lot of the load of what's going on, and therefore it's necessary for young people to understand these issues in a very deep and unemotional way, and I think that's where science comes into it. So without further ado, I'd like to call on Carol O'Donnell. Carol is the director of the Smithsonian Science Education Center, and she's going to give us her impressions about methods in science learning, the role of ISBE in developing global talent. Carol.
So how many of you in the room were actually able to go visit some of the schools today? Okay, so we at the Smithsonian Science Education Center, which is located in Washington, D.C. in the United States, we've played a key role in the past 30 years to develop curriculum materials for students in grades K through 8. It didn't come through, it's fine. And in that role, we've developed 32 different materials, units, if you will, that come with both a teacher's guide and 20-some student guides in a box with the materials that teachers need to teach the topics that Mary just shared with you. So what was interesting is that when we developed those materials, we never realized the wide reach that they would have, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. So to my incredible, great surprise, when we went to the primary school about an hour or so ago, I was able to observe two classrooms, one in 4th grade and one in 5th grade. And in both of those classrooms, they were using science units that I had written 10, 15 years ago as a curriculum developer. One of those units is called Ecosystems. And so that unit was designed for 4th and 5th grade students. The students in the primary school that we just observed are 4th grade students. And this Ecosystems unit is a unit that teaches students that there is great interdependence between the organisms that live on the land and the organisms that live in the water, and that what we do in one environment impacts the other. And so with this 4th grade unit, which is called Ecosystems, students build a terrarium out of an old Pepsi or Coke or 2-liter soda bottle, and they put in the soda bottle water, Alodia for the plant life, algae, snails, and mosquito fish or guppies, which are pretty hardy fish. And then they connect to it another bottle that they make also out of an old soda bottle or Coke bottle. And they put in that soil along with cricket, alopecia, ipods, which are like roly-poly bugs, some leaf matter, and then they grow plants in them, mustard seed, alfalfa sprouts, grass. And over time, the students observe the changes in their ecosystem, and they try to determine whether if they do something to the land, will it eventually impact the water? So they end up changing the pH level of the soil in the land and eventually see that they've also changed the pH level in the water. And so this is just one example of a unit that helps students to better understand what it is to be able to care for their ecosystem, that they as a human are part of that ecosystem, and that what they do in one part of the ecosystem impacts another. I then walked down the hall this morning in the primary school to the 5th grade classroom, and in that classroom they were using a unit that I had written called Catastrophic Events. Now the unit talks about many different things in terms of geosciences, like earthquakes, which I was very surprised yesterday morning. How many of you felt the earthquake yesterday at 6:40 in the morning? So I was quickly reminded that I was in Chile, and the unit that I wrote on catastrophic events, the students in the classroom this morning were using a lesson that focuses on climate change, or what we like to talk about better than climate change, just global climate. Not global warming, but global climate. That this is the lesson that the students were doing this morning was they were talking about wind patterns and ocean currents. And one of the reasons I think this is important is that those units that particular unit, catastrophic events, is available in English for free on the internet. And I did provide the resource to Jorge to provide to any of you for free, and I'm happy to give you the link where you can download that unit for free. So the last thing I want to share with you is that the Smithsonian has what's called the Learning Lab. The Learning Lab is available at smithsonianeducation.org. So smithsonianeducation.org. And when you go to that website, the smithsonianeducation.org website has free lesson plans, free materials that cover both global climate, ecosystems, biodiversity, atmosphere, and it's made up of every lesson plan, video, or other resource for teachers that's been made available. Unfortunately, all of those materials predominantly are available in English only. But I did want to share with you that those resources are available. So.
Thank you. What is really fantastic is what we have seen in school with children this morning. And if our work of all of us has contributed to that, we can be happy. Well, I will briefly comment on the issue of global warming or climate change. We had this extraordinary conference in Paris last December with nearly 200 nations signing an agreement, which is not the best one could dream of, but still which has some hope for the future. Now, yesterday I projected the statement in the agreement signed by those nations, Article 6, which was saying, this is not what is projected today, but this saying that education is fundamental to implement. It's not only the business, it's not only the company, but it's also the school who have to change. So this is a challenge for IPSE, in my opinion. At La Malapat, we have already produced some modules on climate, on oceans, on biodiversity, on volcanoes, and I had the same feeling as you had yesterday morning around 6:20. And we think that specifically those issues deserve special attention and long-term planning. Why? Because this is becoming in the public opinions a matter of emotion more than of reason. You are for or against, but you don't think about it properly. And the challenge is for the whole population of the world to think about it. The second challenge is that it introduces in science education new aspects which are complexity, non-linearity, phase transitions, to speak of scientific language, and also scales of time and space which are not the one of our common environment. And this is very difficult to think 20 or 30 years ahead. Our brain has not been constructed by evolution to cope with those kind of difficult problems. Science itself took a long time before being able to handle, say, nonlinearity, for instance. And on top of that, it is an interdisciplinary problem. Climate change is not an issue for physics, for chemistry, for biology, for meteorology, for astrophysics. It's all of that together. And of course, again, for simplicity, our curricula have built up along the line of the scientific classification of Auguste Comte, for instance, by disciplines. But this has to be broken up if we want to convey some understanding on climate change. So, creating modules which first convey a scientific message, second, give trust in scientists, if they deserve it at least, that their conclusion can be taken seriously. And this is not the case everywhere. Third, this objective involves values. The point of values were extremely well made this morning by Nathalie von Siemens. I think is absolutely right. In the initial IPCEI, we had the value of citizenship, which already was very important, is essential. But today there is much more. There is international solidarity. There is the fact that the poor are going to suffer much more than the rich from the climate change impact, etc. So a new vision of values is required. It has to be global. One has to accept, and students have to accept the fact that what they do, even if it doesn't hurt anyone in their surrounding, might hurt someone in India or Africa, and reciprocally. So connecting schools with those modules is also very important, and I showed yesterday some effort we started in that. Finally, children have also to educate parents, because they have the ability, mental ability to understand issues, and their parents are necessarily more rigid and strict in their mind. So this is a complete new field for IPCEI, not entirely new, but the magnitude is new. And among the many ideas one could have, I would like to propose that we create all the activities who are presented here. We create a global network of exchange specifically on this issue, exchange of resources, exchange relations between teachers, exchange between students, as we have tried to explore. And we have one big advantage for that. The climate change has been understood progressively over the last 4 decades, maybe, by a global consortium of scientists from all the world working together, which is called the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change. And those scientists are maybe 3,000 or more scientists in all over the globe, including meteorology, models, computer, etc., physicists, biologists. And so they could bring to this network a hand that we all said yesterday we consider necessary, involvement of scientists for IPCEI. So this is a kind of vague goal for the moment, but I think that if one is really serious about implementing Article 6 of the Paris Convention in the future, then one has, and probably we have part of the responsibility to do actions in that direction. So my statement, contribution to the statement, would be to say what's written there, and I read it because I can hardly read it from here. Climate change and sustainable development are closely related issues which will be decisive for humanity on Earth in the next decades. There is no hope to implement the drastic conclusions of IPCC and the COP21 climate conference if education, and especially science education, does not, sorry for the mistake, does not prepare children and families to think and act adequately. Moreover, this has to be treated globally, as the problems are global, and involve values as well as knowledge. This is indeed a somewhat new challenge for IPCEI. Thank you.
I will try and be brief about this case. The case of Costa Rica. As an example of our country where biodiversity and climate change have been totally taken in to the awareness of the country. Just to recall, Costa Rica is a small country, 51,000 square kilometers, one of the countries considered having the greatest biodiversity. It is privileged that we have a narrow country with both seas and more than 500,000 species in this very small territory represent close to 4% of total estimated species worldwide. So this means that for this country, everything that is related to biodiversity and everything that is of its concern is part of our daily life. Hence, we've always included among the concepts in schools at all levels. For example, a national policy. A strategy was determined for sustainable development called ECODES, since it goes back to the decade of the 90s. This national policy includes national plans and programs for the conservation and sustainable use of biological biodiversity. And then the Ministry of Education joined the strategy by means of the program, which is called Educating for New Citizenship and Foundations for Curricular Transformation in Costa Rica. And in this general program considers an approach to scientific education for new citizenship, always based on the context of sustainable development. In line with this, the influence of citizens that must affect schools backs social prosperity and well-being by means of active participation, the change of attitude among people in order to turn the ideas of an isolated institution into something that considers contributions by collaborators. And to achieve this, various actions have been carried out. For example, reformulation of science programs, adaptation of the school calendar with the most important dates throughout the day when events related to biodiversity are developed. And since 2005, a cross-cutting pillar was included called Environmental Culture for Sustainable Development, and this was included in the formal curriculum for general primary education. In primary schools, for example, by means of specific thematic pillars such as human beings are an integral part of nature, and then in secondary school, introducing these broader theme areas such as the biodiversity and inventories of life forms. And so, for each one of these topics, we determined values and attitudes that allow the formation of skills. Other activities by the Ministry of Education punishing communication and awareness building in relation to climate change and conservation. Examples, well, I've put some here. Projects agriculture and recovery of plastic bottles and enrollment in environmental contests. Participation in the national program called Bandera Ecológica that promotes cleaning beaches, as well as other examples. In addition to the actions taken by the Ministry of Education itself, and this is important because the ministry has established relations with national and international agencies that work in closely on topics of sustainable development. And especially I would like to highlight two, relation with UNESCO and the relation with the Omar Dengo organization. With UNESCO, there's joint work by the Ministry for Public Education and the multi-country office, UNESCO Costa Rica, in collaboration with a mapping related to biodiversity in current study programs. And so, actions have been implemented regarding sustainable development by means of what is known as the PIA network, which is the network of schools associated to UNESCO and that span 1,000 education schools in 81 countries. And so then, this implementation on the topic of sustainable development has been carried out at schools as well as families and communities from where the student population comes. And other relations, what has been done with UNESCO, training on farming with organic fertilizers, training for the prevention of risk, resilience, and others in disaster situations, teaching or teacher savings in case of high risk. And then a paper drafted by UNESCO. This is a reference because I would like whoever is interested. Well, it is a book that describes suggestions in order to make and use low-cost equipment for these experiments. Now, the Omar Dengo Foundation, which is another very important collaboration, is the foundation is a non-profit organization that aims basically to develop people's capacities by means of education proposals that are innovative, yes, but above all supported on making the most of new technology. So, many education programs are held seeking to promote, support students, scientists and teachers for them to develop projects that in turn will collaborate in the fields of science and so on, but not only biology, but also in the broad sense, especially using technology. Now, the main projects of the FOP within the field of science is the one called Science Adventure, Environmental Players, the GLOBE program, another one called Toward the Stars, the Primary Movilab, and the Emprende Rural Lab, which all include a component for environmental awareness building, of course, addressed from the viewpoint of science. And I would only like to briefly mention two of these. Environmental Managers, a project that is held in public schools and part of the National Program on Educational IT, Ministry Dr. Mabengo, whereby students carry out research in order to understand better the possible environmental consequences of daily practice and carry out actions in order to improve the environment. And then all of this is worked on by means of digital narrative using Scratch language. And then the GLOBE program, this one is international. Science for primary and secondary teachers, and the purpose is to help students and teachers to collaborate in scientific research and carry out or develop scientific thought by inquiry. This is shared in the form of scientific clubs from different schools who are involved in this target. So now, next one. Here I'd like to give you a very quick vision to help you understand that our country, in fact, has taken up with great interest, since it is in a certain way a little bit leaders in issues related to sustainability and caring for the environment. In Costa Rica, 20% of the country's extension is protected, national parks and so on. It is a green country, in fact, because part of the energy, more than 50%, is produced in a clean fashion. And so it was taken up with great interest and responsibility, this challenge to introduce issues of sustainability, of climate change, formal education, and as I said, for this, it has trained teachers, has modified study plans, and has held strategic partnerships with different organizations to create awareness among the relevance of the challenges to be taken on for the preservation and caring of the environment. Thank you.
I am an oceanographer, and Jorge Allende invited me, and he told me, you should bring the ocean by the hand into the climate change discussion, so come on and participate with us. So I will try to do that if we can see the slides in a few seconds. I have a pitch to make to you, because I thought about linking what is my expertise with education, and I still have a plan to write a couple of books on this issue. I believe that can we see the next one immediately? My pitch is essentially that we don't have the planet as a subject in the school at all. And we don't tell the story, one of the most beautiful stories that we have. Because what Mary did with her first slide, he just told us about the unity of life. And until now, we have only one planet known in the known universe with life, and this is the Earth. The unity of life makes us all related between bacteria and mammals ourselves. And in that sense, the home, the system, the natural system that makes this possible is our planet. And our planet evolved, changed in time. And so how come we never talk of our planet in our schools? Because the planet needs to be seen as an integrated system at its work. We need to know the boundaries, the balances. And I think, for example, those balances are gotten much better looking at geochemistry than other things. Geochemistry gives us closure. It's what allows us to close the numbers for IPCC. And we don't even talk about geochemistry. Many people don't even know that geochemistry exists. So the planet, considered as what it is, an integrated functioning system, is out of the school. And science literacy will never be complete unless we deal with that. Next. What about the ocean? Jorge wanted me to bring the ocean. The science of climate change will never be complete. It will not make sense if we don't look at the ocean. The ocean has captured 93.4% of all the extra heat generated by global warming. I will show you the evidence. It captures about 26% of the annual output of CO2 that mankind puts out there. And you should remember that we are throwing 25 million tons of carbon every day into the ocean. So, and this is turning the ocean more acidic. It's changing its pH. If the ocean hadn't done this, and this we can call it an ecosystem service, an ecological service, if it hasn't done that, we already would have 5 to 6 degrees of temperature change on the surface of the planet. So let's go to the next one. We are observing the ocean, luckily. 30 years ago, we had, on a month, we had 20 observations in the ocean, about 10,000, 20,000 in the atmosphere. Today, we are doing much better, luckily. And I devoted my last 17 years of professional life to build a global ocean observing system from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. That's why I am showing you this. We have much better information, and we had to coordinate the science program that underpin the knowledge that we survey in the IPCC. Next. So this is part of the evidence. You have in the two upper panels the snapshots of the how the ocean has heated. And the top one is the surface of the planet, and you see the more reddish areas are warmer. The second panel shows you a vertical cut to see the penetration. The depth of the ocean, the upper line is the surface of the ocean, the bottom line is 700 meters. So you can see that in the northern hemisphere you have a much deeper and profound warming of the deeper layers of the ocean. And the two bottom panels are the time sequence. So you have it from the early 80s to 2010, how you are moving from blue, cold ocean to red, warm ocean. The next. This is the accumulation of energy, heat. What is provoking all these changes is the accumulation of heat, and this is the amount of heat measured in the surface layer of the ocean. On the left, we had pretty bad numbers, 20, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, so you have a lot of variance around the measurement of heat. But today we know that we have a much more larger increase of heat in the ocean. This is how we know that we have the 93% of the extra heat generated by global change in the ocean. Next. And this is the penetration of CO2 from the surface to the deep waters of the ocean. Most of it is accumulated in the upper 10% of the ocean, but is penetrating slowly further down. Next one. I wanted to, and I will review some of these proposals, but I wanted to give you some of the ideas that could be developed as units for education. What makes these planets the only one with life in the known universe? This is an open question still. Why in a liter of seawater, where on average we have 22,000 genetically distinct living units? This is amazing. Actually, we don't know why we do have that large reservoir of genetic information in the ocean. What is dynamic equilibrium that keeps our atmosphere with 21% of oxygen? In fact, I was reading recent literature that says that essentially we don't have 21% in many parts of the surface of the Earth anymore. We have 19. And in certain cities, you get very often in regional and episodic events to 16%. So we're fiddling around with our oxygen. Half of the oxygen is produced by the ocean, the ones annually. So much of it is certainly respired back by the organisms, but these are essential equilibrium that are dynamic. They are not given or static and given forever. These are dynamic equilibrium. And we need to be conscious, and we need to pass the concept that what is a dynamic equilibrium, and how is it that we can interact, and we are interacting with them by default. Why we found trilobites in the Andes at 3,000 meters? This has to do with geological history, of course. But all these things have been done with my college students. I take them to the Andes to find the trilobites at 3,000 meters. But we need to do better at passing these questions down to the elementary school. How come coral reef islands, the territory of many small island developing states, grew 120 meters since the last glaciation? Because the last glaciation have captured a lot of ocean, and so the ocean was 120 meters below today. But the islands grew up because they are alive. These are coral reefs. So these grew up. This is biology, keeping up countries on the surface of the ocean. Will much of our built infrastructure in coastal regions survive with sea level rise? If sea level rise 1 or 2 meters, the answer probably is that a lot of our infrastructure will not survive. We know that sea level have changed in history and geological times, and we have built most of our infrastructure, human-built infrastructure, very close to the coast. So we'll have to take care of this. The planet is not in danger with global change. It is our civilization that is. The planet will survive us forever, for many, many millions of years, and will follow the destiny of our star, the life cycle of our star. The problem is for our civilization. We have done things that are not very intelligent. Why does the sea bottom of Valparaiso moves inland 8 millimeters per year, and the one of Aysén further south in Chile, what, just 1.8? Well, the answer is easy. There are different tectonic plates. There is a triple junction between two tectonic plates that hit the American continent precisely in Peninsula de Taitao in Chile. Has been thoroughly studied, but not by Chileans, by many foreigners, have came to see how is it that two different plates moving at different rates collide with a big continent like South America. So I just wanted to, but I know that I don't have much time. So I expected to show you some, can we search one slide? Keep moving, one, that's exactly the one. I don't know, it doesn't look very nice. But these were two examples of 2 liters of seawater in the surface of British Columbia, I think. This is British Columbia, Canada. And the number of different, I would hesitate to call them species, but certainly operational taxonomic units is around 22,000, 24,000 in 1 liter of water. Something to think about. I think the next one was giving you the explanation, but no, it's too dark. I don't know why, but okay, I think I stop here because otherwise Mary will do something to me. Thank you.
Well, I'll just talk, and you guys listen. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about how we've used zebrafish as a tool for teaching teachers and also teaching school children about different aspects in biology. And I'll try at the end to link it to environmental science. So the zebrafish is a small freshwater teleos. It's only about 1.5 inches long when it's an adult. And why do we use it? This fish originally comes from Southeast Asia. We use it because it's an excellent developmental model. It generates lots and lots of eggs. That's pretty much all of what it does during its life. And the eggs produce embryos that are quite transparent, which is, of course, a delight for people who work on looking at development. In addition, the zebrafish, being so small, can be kept in these tanks, which are not your typical aquaria that you have at home, but they're these commercial rack systems that have dozens of boxes in each one of them that contain the fish. And we need this because we need lots of different lines to be able to look at genetics, which is one of the other attractive features of this organism. Now, to keep zebrafish is pretty easy. We do it very professionally in the lab, like I show here. It's a little dark, but I think you can see the fish swimming around in our tanks there. And the nice thing is that you can keep them in boxes in water on top of the table and watch them doing the thing they love best, which is to reproduce. They reproduce every day, and they lay hundreds of eggs. Each female can lay about 200 eggs. And then it's very easy from these plastic boxes just to collect the eggs, which can be seen here. And as I said, these eggs are transparent, and you can watch from fertilization all the way to the larval stage in a very simple Petri dish. So this is really useful in terms of having a live animal model in the classroom with which to carry out experiments. Now, the other nice thing about zebrafish, and I'm afraid this is also might be too dark, but this is a microtiter well plate, which has a few wells here, and you can see the larvae inside. They're swimming around quite happily. So you don't have to keep them in a big Petri dish, you can keep them in a little Petri dish like this one. Why is that important? Because this system allows you to do assays or to treat different fish with compounds, chemicals, environmental samples, drugs, etc. And that will allow you to screen for compounds and their effects on the development of the animals. And that's a really powerful thing that the zebrafish is being used for right now. When you look closely, and this you need now a dissecting scope or a microscope, but a dissecting scope is fine, you can pretty much in this 2-day-old larva see everything that's happening inside as it develops, including blood circulation. Now, I think Kenna Mills in a few minutes will tell us about how this can be applied for biomedicine, because in fact you can see the blood circulating very easily and the heart pumping and so on in the live animal without any intervention. So this is something that is very hard to see in other kinds of organisms. Now, of course, we can use the zebrafish for basic research, which is what we've done for many years, but there's also preclinical applications, as I mentioned. You can use it for toxicology, and a number of people have realized that the zebrafish is a great teaching tool. We, of course, are not the first to realize this, and our Bible is the zfin.org webpage, which is the database for all of the zebrafish resources, and it includes a very nice chapter on educational resources, which I invite you to visit to look for the different things you can do with zebrafish. I really like this one called BioEyes. This was created by Steve Farber at the Carnegie Institution. And he has a program that's now running in many cities in the United States and also abroad, where he brings the zebrafish into the classroom and has a number of experiments to be carried out. Among them, he has one that has to do with the environment, and that's why I pulled up this page as well, in which you can take environmental samples, and particularly water samples, and test them on the zebrafish for toxicity. And this is really useful if you want to determine whether the watershed in your community has any kind of toxicity in it. Now, switching gears, last January we had this workshop at the University of Chile in which we decided to test a module or a portable lab that's part of the portable lab program that's already been running in Chile with a molecular biology lab and an enzymology lab. And our portable lab had to do with fertilization and early development in animal models. And I'll show you some of the things we did in zebrafish, and I think it'll illustrate well what kinds of things can be done here. The observations that we had the teachers do, there was about 25 teachers that came into our test module, was to look at reproduction and fertilization, early development, morphogenesis, organogenesis, blood circulation, heartbeats, behaviors, and also, this is very important, we looked at either normal or altered development. And this can be not only genetic, for example, you can have a wild type or a mutant, but you can also have untreated and treated fish with compounds or environmental samples. The concepts that we provided in this module are what are growth and proliferation, how that happens, and you can look at it in real time in zebrafish because development is so fast. What's the concept of differentiation? And that's very linked to what means to have stem cells, which are cells that are not differentiated and have the potential to do so. How heredity works, and this you can see it again very easily. You have two adults, you make a cross, and you get the Mendelian inheritance of different traits. And also you can look at the concept of teratogenesis, which is environmental perturbations of development. You probably can't see anything here, but the point here was to show that we've used different compounds to examine what the effects on development are. In this case, we're using something called triazole, which is a fungicide used in agriculture here in our country. And at different concentrations, you can see that there are different developmental effects on the formation of the jaw and so on. So there's not lethality here, but effects on development, which of course are going to impact the survivability of these animals, and of course the animals in the environment as well. But that's not that interesting, I think. It's much more interesting to have something that you can show children that is more relatable. And in this case, there's a little video of our workshop where what we do is put a cigarette here, light it. We have a little vacuum pump that's going to pull the cigarette smoke through a solution of water here. And we're going to dissolve all of the water-soluble cigarette compounds in that solution, and then we're going to treat the fish with it. And what happens when you do that, and we of course have to dilute it a lot because cigarette smoke is very toxic. Whoops, there we go. We see different developmental effects, and we can measure lethality at the higher concentrations, which will be here. This is just a graph we made with survival of the fish versus different concentrations of the cigarette smoke extract. And of course, it will kill the fish at high doses, and you see that they don't even hatch. But at low doses, they don't die, but they have serious developmental effects. And I'm not sure if you can see, but here there's a very important cardiac edema forming. And it's something that with a very simple magnifying glass, the kids would be able to look at and see. So I will finish up by telling you what the conclusions from our workshop were and why we think this is a good idea to implement and eventually reach the schools with it. In our opinion, to have a biology lab, and in general I'm talking about where you want to look at life, I think that life has to be, of course, alive, but it has to be visibly alive, okay? And it's great to have molecular studies where you have gels or you have PCR amplification products and so on, and I think the kids like that, but they really like to see something that's alive and see a phenotype or an effect on that organism. The fish embryos have traditionally been used to bring different concepts to the classroom, so it's a very robust model. They children and the teachers can grow the fish themselves if they want in the lab, or they can be provided by an academic setting. They can relate to the animals. If you're having the fish smoke cigarettes, that's very relatable to any child, I think. The ethical concerns involved in general with fish are less or not as severe as when you're working with mammals, for example. So mice always have this issue behind it. For some reason, fish, even though they're vertebrates and they're just as complicated, nobody considers them very important in terms of protection in the ethical sense. Of course we do, but in any case, the embryos and larvae can be anesthetized, and we can work with them without any concern. And the final thing, when we had a little survey with the teachers that took our module, what they said was that many concepts that they had learned about theoretically in classes that they themselves had had were now ingrained into them in another way, which is the actual experience of looking at it and doing the experiments. And I think that we sometimes forget. We think that all these modules in which we're trying to get the kids to do actual science and experiments and learn by doing the experiments, we can't forget the teachers, because if the teachers have to stand in front of the class and talk about something, it's very important that they did that experiment before and they know what they're talking about. So they all told us, we now feel very confident that we can stand in front of the classroom and tell them about concepts in biology and show them how to do it, whereas before it was much more difficult. So I think that's my final slide, and I'll just finish here, and thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for the invitation, for the organizers. I represent here Ecoscience Foundation, which together with Fundación Ciencia y Vida, 4 years ago started with a dream that was to build the first scientific bus for our country. And it was initially inspired on the SCP, so it's for us an honor to be here today talking about the fact that the first science bus for Chile really exists, and our experience in that we have been having these years. So what is the bus conciencia? It can be translated as the bus with science, but also the bus consciousness, because in the essence of this project, it was the need to generate consciousness on our biodiversity and environmental issues. So what we do in this science bus is that we travel through Chile in the rural schools, also urban schools, and we offer them inquiry-based learning experience modules that they freely choose. And I think that is one of the essence of the project, why we think the teachers feel is very successful in their schools, is that we take the time and listen. We lift the needs from their teachers. So we go to every school and we ask them, what topic do you want to reinforce while the week that we will be supporting your science classes? So we take the time to listen what they need in the real classes. We go from 3rd to 6th grade. And what has been very interesting is that we've been acting like a sensor of the school needs in rural places from the north to the south of Chile. And a lot of environmental and climate change topics are being freely expressed. So we think that it's important to share with the teachers today here. We as a team develop freely for them the content and the modules they freely choose. So it's very ambitious because it's not like a thematic bus of science. Although my preparation if for example, of cellular biology, I would love it to be about cells. But we first make this first step where they can really detect the problem and the issues that they want to reinforce in their schools. So every school is a different challenge and a different development for our team. And as we've been acting as this sensor for educational needs, we found a lot of surprises from the north of Chile. For example, they want to learn about, of course, the care in the use of water, the use of solar energy, the ecosystem equilibrium, where we use not the typical animals what they learn, but with Chilean fauna, Chilean examples. Also in the south, they are very interested to learn about volcanoes, earthquakes, and the effect in oceans. So we are constantly developing these modules that we would love to share with the teachers present today. You can enter to our webpage, it's busconciencia.org, busconciencia.org. And what is more important, I think that climate change issues is a global problem, but we also think that the solutions from the educational perspective has to be also reached as the local needs. So we adapt all these modules in the local ambient and find a solution with the teachers. We see the teachers as the important players, the essential players of this. And well, another thing we would like to, we're now dreaming, is to expand the float of science buses, because we only have one for all the regions, and it's very difficult, of course, to organize and coordinate, and we want to grow in impact. Actually, we're going, during 1 year, we cover 10,000 students, more or less, from north to south. But now we're dreaming to a second phase to have at least 5 more buses from here to 3 more years. And why not think in 1 per region and 3 more buses that can travel international, so we can connect also countries with this spirit. So I would love you to invite all of you to dream maybe one of these buses to be in climate change. We are now in an open process to select the topics, and we feel this would be very important. So if we can join some of our experience together and make one of these a climate change bus, it will be, I think, a lot of impact in our communities. And finally, also our foundation, Ecoscience, today we launched a contest through all the country that invites students and teachers, but also general public, to dream of a better Chile using science as a tool to improve our lives. And we are also including what we're talking about today, environmental issues. So we invite all of you to participate in this contest. The prize is, it is called concursoeinstein.cl. And one of the prizes is to travel to the original files of Einstein to Israel. So it's a very interesting prize, and we would be happy to share with you more about this. So that's what we wanted to share with you today. Thank you for
Miguel introduced the topic of zebrafish already, and for better or worse, I used to work in science education a long time ago, and as Dr. Allende said yesterday, this was my field of choice 17 years ago, but I've since switched and now work in cancer genomics at the #1 cancer center in the United States, and I can tell you that education that is K-12 or pre-universitario is as important to continue through adulthood, and even with our clinicians that theoretically should know better. And so I will talk a little bit about this. I will say that when I first started, one of the models we did use was zebrafish in the schools, and so I will continue along with what Dr. Allende was talking about earlier and talk to you a little bit about how you can extend those models if you choose thinking about zebrafish in schools, what other aspects of the curriculum you could include. But when I started working in science education, my real focus was understanding the conceptions or misconceptions that students have, particularly in the area of genetics. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I can bring, how I used to bring these topics together in the classroom. So Obviously, and I pulled from Dr. Albert's suggestion yesterday, this idea of a scientific temper and how it's more important to think about how we can think about teaching our students to ask the right questions and know where to go for information and how to ask appropriate questions. And while that's important, of course, and we all believe this as scientists, unfortunately, we're still measuring, we're still evaluating on how much they remember generally, how many facts they can remember. And so, unfortunately, although we have suboptimal evaluations, I think we can still teach inquiry or teach those facts through inquiry. And this is the question about what are the most appropriate inquiry-based educational decisions we can make. What are the best curriculum we can choose to teach facts while teaching inquiry? La próxima. And so I would argue that what makes zebrafish for me one of the most powerful organisms or models we could use in the classroom is precisely what Miguel said. And that's the fact that these organisms are developing right before their eyes. And when they see a single cell that comes from two fish, and within 48 hours, they see an entire organism from head and beating heart and every blood cell running through the body. It is a most amazing thing for these children because literally life has been created in front of them and as they're watching with a simple microscope. And it's those powerful visual models that they can see in front of them that can take a misconception and change it. Because what we see is our misconceptions in all of the science education, toda la literatura pedagógica, dicen que las misconcepciones son los que bloqueamos de entender algo. Every misconception that we have keeps us from learning. And so the work that we did early on was looking at what are the misconceptions that students have about genetics. And I chose genetics for a variety of reasons we can talk later, but it's one of those things that I was very bad at, so I wanted to get better, and so I picked that as my field. And so we did this DNA contest of essays. We asked students from all over the country, this is all US based, to write essays for DNA Day. So the 25th of April is National DNA Day, and so as the Director of Education for the American Society of Human Genetics, we ran this nationwide essay contest. And for years, we collected all of the essay answers from elementary students to high school students. And we analyzed what the students said. So these were supposed to be the best essays from all over the US submitted. They won at their school level, and then they were submitted to us, yeah? And so I put the little, sorry, I'm having a really hard time. I'm a native English speaker, but Spanish and English is, me cuesta harto de pensar en las dos lenguas. Bueno, I put the publication link down at the bottom. So if you want to look, this table is actually quite funny. I mean, it's sad, but it's funny because these are real quotes from students that submitted essays about genetics and why they love genetics. And so the first one, it's small. It says, la mitad de tu DNA viene de tu padre, y la otra mitad viene de tu madre. Half from your mom, half from your dad, you have your DNA. Entonces, si te parece como tu padre afuera, tus órganos adentro vinieron de tu madre. So since you look half like your dad, if you look like your mom on the outside, then you must look like your dad on the inside. It's not quite how it works, right? In the future, knowledge about genetics could help us stop deadly diseases and cancers, but that will only help us with diseases that are hereditary, which is of course not true. Genes determine everything from your sex and hair color to what diseases you might have and how high you will grow. So this is a concept actually that this genetic determinism, which is a huge misconception in high school students, is also something we started to try to go after. La próxima. And so again, unfortunately, the resolution of the screen and the lighting is keeping us from seeing this very well. But in zebrafish, you can not only create all of these different strains of mutant fish, you can also have fish that are transgenic, or peces transgénicas. In this case, we have a fish that has green fluorescent protein in all of its cardiovascular system. So this fish was actually developed by Dr. Brent Weinstein, with whom I did my postdoc, and he let me take these fish into schools in Montgomery County, and which was also challenging because I was a postdoc and he wanted me in the lab, so that was a little bit of a debate. But we were able to actually show these students not only what happens when you have heritable mutations in the genes that affect your vasculature. So if you can see on the right, there's the vasculature starts to crisscross, and we actually were able to show students that actually the somites, the muscles, those boundaries have to be intact in order for the vasculature to grow correctly. And if they weren't intact, you could see the veins going everywhere. And ultimately, these fish actually survive but don't look very normal. And so we were able to actually teach them about this, but it's not only that we were able to teach them about zebrafish, but we were able to teach them within one set of curriculum, because we kept going back whenever it was kind of coming up in the curriculum that was required by the National Science Education Standards. We were able to teach them about organ systems, we were able to teach them about development, we were able to teach them about ethical, legal, and social issues, right? Because of the idea of these transgenic organisms. And here was one example that they could see actually, okay, maybe transgenic organisms aren't so deleterious, aren't so peligroso, right? And so we are also able to teach them about basic genetics. La próxima. And if you grow these same fish, to use an example that Miguel used, whether it's the copper ions or even arsenic. So for example, in that time I was also, because I had fallen in love with Chile when I was here, we were doing arsenic studies because there's a population in Antofagasta that has high arsenic had high arsenic in the water, and these same people are at high risk for bladder cancer. So we were able to show that higher levels of arsenic in the water, just like Miguel was showing with the smoke, could actually cause defects in how cells grow. And so this happens to be a copper ion treatment, and again, it's very hard to see, but the vessels start to be also misguided. So there's no genetic change in these organisms, but still the patterns of development can change. And so you can start to distinguish between environmental impacts and heritable change. La próxima. And you can also start to see that there's a possibility to explore human disease through these. So these are real human disease models. When we were studying these in the lab, we were looking for mutations in the vasculature that we would claim maybe had something to do with metastasis and vascular connection to cancer. But really, in this case, we were able to actually, there are other groups, and we had also done this, this is, again, I have the reference, but you can actually put tumor cells, human tumor cells, into the fish and see how they interact in different backgrounds. And so we were able to do these with a couple of sarcoma models in the schools to show students how these different model systems were able to actually look and study cancer. And so again, what the nice thing about this is you can use the same model system in the classroom to study environmental impact, diversity, genetics, and human disease. La próxima. And of course, again, the point was that we can, by bringing these models back into the classroom, it starts to change how students perceive or conceive their thinking, and it hits all of the different science standards. Because this is one of the big things the teacher said, okay, if you're going to do this, I need to know what I can cross off my list that I have to test, that I'm going to be testing my students on. And so we were able to show them all of the different lessons that these kinds of plans would work towards. La próxima. Yeah. Okay, I have 1 minute, yeah? Okay. So finally, I will tell you this. I work in the field of personalized cancer therapy, and every medical doctor I work with has to know about testing their patients for mutations in cancer. And so this is my plug also, that we must not all just be thinking about preparing students K through 12, but not a single doctor I work with the exception of my phase 1 clinic director, hardly a single doctor I know knows how to look at a medical report that has DNA sequencing data and know how to interpret that information. And until we can create a system where we can actually provide just-in-time information for physicians to consider, we're actually going to be causing entire fields of biomedicine a lot of harm. And so you can talk to me about this. I've been giving talks across Santiago this week about this specific subject, so I'm very passionate about this as it's a real problem in the US, and if it's a real problem at the #1 cancer center in the United States, it's a real problem everywhere. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the invitation. As Caitlin says, I came from Villarrica in the south of Chile. We can go to the next slide. I want to show you first, we are there in the south in the Araucanía region. There's a region with very low achievement scores in science, and also the region with the greatest indigenous population in the country. So if you go to the next one and click again, we are working. I'm going to talk about this project. Our main objective of the project is to promote inquiry-based learning. We in Villarrica have two programs, preschool teachers training and primary teacher training. So what we are doing is trying to incorporate inquiry-based learning in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in our students, and also working with this group of schools. We work with 105 schools that are participating with us. We train teachers with our science teachers, and we are also working in adaptations to make science knowledge more accessible to the kids in the region. So the next slide, please. Yeah, we have. I'm going to talk to you about 5 dimensions of our project. Not only the indigenous knowledge presence. First, I'm going to pass a little bit faster from the. We make workshops, of course, with in training teachers and also with our students. We care a lot about following up this. We work with the schools, we go visit them, we make meetings with the directive teams. I'm not going to talk much more about it. If you want to know more, I have this summary of our project that I can give to you, and we can talk more about it later. Then we have this adaptation that we call how to incorporate local knowledge and indigenous knowledge to the science lessons. We are also working on an adaptation along with the Haus der Kleinen Forscher Foundation in Berlin in science and music. I forgot to tell you that we are focusing on preschool and first grade of primary school education. So we are talking about the very little kids. And I want to talk and something that I think it's very related with climate change and non-conventional energies. That is the biodigester, educational biodigester project that we are working on along with the Ministry of Energy. We can go to the next one. Just to show you what we have done again and again. What we have done in the last year, we make 7 different workshops. I have some pictures there. Let's go to the next one. I don't want to focus much more on this. Go again. So this is something how we monitoring. We make interviews, class observation, meeting with the directive teams. We use a usage survey so we can incorporate to our workshops how it is working on schools and how to make modifications according to what teachers need in their schools. We visit 20 schools 2 times per semester, and we are trying to build a model to get to more schools every semester. If we can go to the next one. No, this is our pictures. You can click again. You can see very well. This is the picture of the schools we have visited. Pass to the next slide. This I want to focus here a little bit because I think this have to be with conservation and sustainability. We are working also in Villarrica. We are creating a new program on sustainable development, and it's very important for us not only of course the sustainability of the biodiversity and the natural resources, but also a cultural thing that has to come along with the conservation of the biodiversity. There's the local knowledge regarding the nature, the animals, the medical properties of the flora, and all that stuff. It helps for the children to understand why it's so important to preserve this kind of things. So we are working, we work with an anthropologist, we develop 3 different activities with working guides that incorporate local knowledge, and we are now making a revision with Chilean experts, and we are also piloting in schools. We are thinking of making this kit to make these activities. I forgot to tell you that we are working with what Natalie presented before on the experimental project of Siemens Stiftung. So they have this kit where we can make activities in environment, health, and energy. And we are also working on building another group of kits on indigenous knowledge, for instance, science and music, and we have been working on that, training teachers, trying to give them materials, and then go to the schools with them to help them make their lessons. So this is one of the adaptations. We made one workshop last year regarding this issue with great attendance and very it's a theme that is very attractive to teachers, and so we are willing to continue improving that. The next slide, please. Those are the guides we are working on. We can talk it after if anybody is interested. Go to the next one. I'm going to skip this one. It's about science and music. It's especially focused on preschool education. It's trying to understand how sounds work. But since I don't have much time, I'm going to pass to the biodigesters. I think I'm going to stop a little bit more on this one because I think it has more to do with this round table. We are thinking about incorporating to schools biodigesters. I don't know if you know what biodigesters are, but they work like a cow stomach and produce gas, biogas. So you put excrements from cows or organic residuals that we have a lot of that in our rural schools, and you can make energy from it. You can make gas. You can use it for cook. You can, if you have a large amount of organic residuals, you can also even make electricity. So I think it's a very good way for, in an inquiry-based fashion, to go and understand how matters works and understand the entire cycle. So what we are doing, if you pass to the fortunately, we make this alliance with the Ministry of Energy, and we now have this funding to start working on this. We designed the first prototype. Please go to click again. There is the prototype. It's kind of a, we first think about a bee. We are working on maybe changing that. I don't know how you say it in English, but we are thinking now of making it chanchito de tierra. Do you know how to translate that? It's another bag that it has more relation with the decomposition of the soil. So what we are doing is that we are making educational activities to maintain the biodigester among all grades and among different assignments. It's not only on science, it's also in mathematics, it's also in technology, it's in many fields of the school that we can make it. So because we have to create educational activities to keep it working. We have to maintain this. So we are working on that. We are also making a greenhouse along with this because the output of the biodigester is a very good fertilizer. Yes. So I think it's a way to make the children understand the complete cycle of matter, and also a very since we are working with the educational designers, we want to make it very attractive in its form. I have now in the next slide this is the greenhouse that it doesn't look very well, but this is the greenhouse that contains the biodigester, and we have another greenhouse where we will grow vegetables and and stuff. So that was what I wanted to present. We are very, very happy to have to be here to communicate our project, to get to know this amount of different initiatives to promote inquiry-based learning all around the globe. I think this gives us a lot of hope, and what we are doing is in the good direction. So thank you very much for the invitation.
What I've come to tell you is on behalf of CENACYT, the Natural Center for Science, Technology and Innovation that I represent. We're also working about these climate changes that are bringing us to do things against the biosphere. We're not free of all of this. And it's affecting our biodiversity, our waters. Panama has always been a small country, but with a tremendous biodiversity and many water sources. And so we're along these same lines, we are concentrated here because together with the Ministry of Education, we are trying to carry out certain projects. At the ministry, we've established a partnership with them so that CENACYT creates projects and gives them resources so that at the schools they can implement this. We're working together with the Smithsonian that also has an area on marine exhibition, and so our children at the schools can go to this place and learn about how to preserve the environment where they can live, and there are guided activities. We're working with primary education all the way to university level, but the idea is to get to know the environment close up. We're convinced that what you don't know, you cannot care for. So taking children to this exhibition center where they can come into contact with the sea, for them to know that there's life there, but then we're losing that because we're not becoming conscious enough to preserve it. So it's up to them to cultivate that spirit of preservation. As I heard Costa Rica giving their presentation, and they have included this to their formal curriculum. So the Secretariat right now is sending out open invitations so that people from science, researchers, may do everything possible. So with this type of opportunities, that they may develop projects to join this major campaign for preservation. And also right now we have a biodiversity museum, a spectacular program for education. They've already have some programs already developed with materials, and the project is in the Pacific Ocean as such, and so small children are able to interact there and learn why all of this is so important. We are convinced that in terms of conservation and everything related to the environment and preserving our planet, this can only be done through education, not only in the classroom, but we also have a campaign in the street. We say, let's do science in the street. So we go to the street, we take a corner, and people are asking questions. We're doing very simple workshops so that people, well, we're trying to create scientific literacy. We say to people, we must be aware of what we're doing. Today I've heard of everything that's being done here. We also use these kits, as the Smithsonian has, and the ecosystems column, so that from a classroom, well, even if they can't go to different places because the schools are very far away, well, the kit gets to them anyway. So that's what we're trying to do throughout our small country. We are small, yes, but we are interested in preserving what we have, because quite truly, we are very concerned. We've already seen how so quickly so many things have increased, deteriorating our previous privileges. For example, right now, last weaker, Panama had temperatures as high as 40 degrees C, which means that the sum of what we have not cared for as human beings is now turning around. It is necessary that we should not wait to experience higher temperatures before doing these projects. We need to continue investing in all of this. We are convinced that education is the only means to achieve conservation or awareness of people, and especially our children. So for me, it is an honor to have shared with you and hear the initiatives of what other countries are doing and what we can learn from to grow as a country and preserve our resources. Thank you very much. And well, that is a little bit of what we are doing in my country. We are two teachers that belong to the University of Chile Equity Program that goes back more than 10 years, trying to bring about a change at school level. Our children are the key to caring for our environment. So we, men and women, we have the privilege of being able to work with them and creating change. But first we need to work with the teachers. We must work on initial training courses with them, and then Chile will have the privilege of having monitors, people who go to the schools, and we coach our colleagues by planning, accompanying the classroom, and reflecting on what has happened so that we are constantly in touch with them. It is necessary to produce changes. The teachers are a key component. We've heard this time and time again, yesterday and today. It is the teachers that transfers to the child what they themselves learned, so that there's a sort of privilege implied by working on this program. The national curriculum is concerned with climate change, and so our aim includes many topics related to this process. And so we have devised many lessons to do from preschool to 8th grade to produce this change. There are many lessons to be learned in this, and since we are living in a country that is in constant movement, we have learned a lot about continental plates, tsunamis, earthquakes, and so much more. So of all of these things, we've selected one to explain how we go about things. This is water and the planet. The idea is that we can say to students, get them involved in this problem that we want to put to them. So therefore, they begin thinking about this. Where can we find water on our planet? And we ask them the question. And so, after they've understood what we're asking them, and where have they seen water, they go mentioning different places. And the most incredible thing is that sometimes you overlook, or you haven't even thought that they've realized that there's water there. And then we say to them, well, once you have this idea that we have that we're surrounded by water, in fact, so we say to them, well, how do you think the water is distributed around the earth? And we use a model. It's really a plastic bottle full of water. And so, with questions, We go making sure that this bottle that we are showing them, each group has this material. And so we say to them, look, this is the water that represents what's on our earth. How do you think this is distributed? Salted water and fresh water. So they tell us of their predictions. And we also invite you to think, from that liter of water, how much do you think is salt water and how much is sweet water? This is the prediction given by a 5th grade student. They divided all water into 2 bottles. Salt water, we stained it blue, but we should change that color, and the other one is fresh water. And this is their prediction. Well, the next question is to set them thinking. What they said was fresh water, that they could now distribute it in other parts, that they should think now on the polar caps, underground water, lakes and rivers, and then finally the water that we can find under the ground and in the air. The thing is that children tend to an equilibrium. The fresh water are divided into 4 bottles, and if you take a look at the predictions, this includes more or less similar amount of water in each bottle. So this is the children's forecast in relation to salt water, fresh water, and then the fresh water in these places where it's distributed. And so now we share with them the real figures that are in all the books, and we give them once again that same water, a bottle with a water representing all water on earth, but always returning to this idea that they must know that this is representing something. We cannot lose sight of the idea that we are building along the way. And so we give them the bottle, and they need to distribute the water. 972 ml for salt water and 28 ml for fresh water. We give them pipettes and a series of instruments so that they can talk about what they're going to do. And sometimes, first of all, they use a test tube and they take the water from the bottle that's more full, and then they say, no, maybe that's not the best alternative. Let's take the 28 mLs out. But this entire process that they go through, the interesting thing is that among themselves, they're able to begin discussing. They talk about things until they do actually reach an agreement. And then finally, we give them 4 bottles, and they distribute the amount of mLs expected, say, for the polar cap, equivalent to 9 mLs. So underground water, 4 mLs. Lakes and rivers, 2 little drops that they put there, 2 drops, yes, 2 drops. And water in the soil, in the ground, and the air for all the entire planet, 1 drop. So at that point, all groups have this bottle with its drop, and then the teacher who is directing the class, and we say, now let's talk. And we have to bite our lips not to say to them, look, can you realize that little drop, what are we going to do? But no, because they have to answer, not us. And so, we But the worst thing is that when they realize that one little drop is the water for all living beings on Earth, 2 seconds go by and you feel it's 2 hours, 5 seconds, and you wait until, well, there's always someone who says, and starting the conversation starts to become aware of what this actually meant. Well, the time comes when I want you to imagine that all of this material that the University of Chile has, together with other things that they have there on their table, this includes their thoughts. So, always based on what they're seeing, the evidence, which is what we teachers find most difficult because we're so used to see the theory as important. And what we've done in class with them is abandoning them a little bit. They need to ask the questions. They need to relate things in theory and practice. And some of the questions that they're asking are there. So in the classroom, based on what happens and what they're answering, you need to take that and adapt it according to what they're thinking. Because the interesting thing of building knowledge based on what they're doing is that maybe it's not exactly what we are thinking, but it's what they are thinking. So it's the answer what captures our heart, because sometimes you ask a question and you know the answer, but then afterwards they answer something else. And well, that is what motivates us. Or the other one, they actually answer what you already knew. But well, there's an order to all this. We say to children, what do you think about the distribution of water on Earth? Where is most of the water? But well, we don't tell them, but they see the names there in the material and they go talking and answering. And then finally, how much water is available for human beings? And that is what they are seeing here. So from that amount, which is available in the ground and in the air, the plants get water, our pets get water, everyone uses water. This is our biological water, that is, for human beings. Just this little bit from the liter of water that the planet had. So therefore the figures are quite stunning. So same as us, who are surprised when we analyze these things, then afterwards we ask them different things. We say, well, for example, what can they do to be able to care for that water? And they say that they leave the tap running at break time. And normally in the kindergarten they have a hose that they use in the summer to wet themselves. But then, and they say at home also when mom washes the dishes. So we have did this with the parents at a school, and the parents came in that day and they did the same activity. And well, I give this to you as an example for the next point, because these people were a little bit wary because they were invited to come and do a workshop on science. And the teachers, we say we come from the university, and so the parents say, well, what on earth are we going to there? But the interesting thing is that they sit down, first keeps in silent, but then afterwards, when they realize what we're putting to them and that they can have an opinion, we ask them, they start discussing, and they realize that they can also do science, and they also propose how to care for water, and you see how enthusiastic they are. So, and that's one workshop, and maybe we could do more, but they're always asking us, when are we going to do more workshops? Well, with them, maybe we do as many as we would like because of the time and so many other things. Now, the last one. Well, these are some of the things that we could use with the children. for them too to continue imagining what that amount of water actually means. So even though we can look for different things, people can do something different. You can give them a guideline for these subjects, but this is our challenge as teachers. We need to rewrite our books, all the materials based on practice. So I think that everyone here who love teaching, this is what keeps us bogged down with work. And I repeat, those of us who love this profession. Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon. Well, I'm part of the Science Communication Organization at the Institute of Biodiversity, and I've come here to tell you about some of the things that we've done over the 10 years that the program has been in operation. Context-wise, the Millennium Institute for Ecology and Biodiversity goes back 10 years, and the researchers are in several regions of the country, same as our science communication program. We're spread out through various regions of Chile. Our science communications program aims to disseminate scientific knowledge created at the Institute towards non-scientific audiences, and so promote the appreciation of science and care for our biodiversity. We do this through activities of different types, products and materials. That I will now tell you about some of these things related to the school audience. Teaching ecology in the schoolyard. This is a methodology that we've become experts at, both in terms of training people to carry it out, holding workshops for children of different ages. It's a methodology that was created by Peter van Singer, and he has disseminated throughout Latin America and the US. It is an inquiry cycle in a local context that attempts to simplify the scientific method by means of exploring the surroundings and teaching the participants to ask questions, basically teach them on how to answer and how to learn. And it integrates several school curriculum disciplines and includes play in the environment. In this case, it could be done in the schoolyard or wherever. Now, the methodology is based on these three stages. First of all, asking a question, and then answering that question by means of a particular action. We need to design a methodology, collect the data, and analyze them. And then with this entire bag of information, we get the people to reflect on the results obtained, drawing conclusions and extending their questions, which leads them to complete the cycle and continue doing it. Well, as I was saying, since 2006, we've been doing this sort of workshop all the way from Arica to the extreme south, from the extreme north to the extreme south. We've held more than 50 workshops from 5,000 participants, preschool children, primary and secondary children, adults, parents, tourist guides, national park guards, so on. Well, since we work at a scientific institute, we began developing a line for assessment and of communications of the science that we're doing. Because we say we need to assess and inquire into that far beyond the actual figures that are required of us. So in 2014, we assessed several of our activities, including these workshops. Together with a group of social scientists, They devised an instrument that has to do with collecting people's expectations and level of satisfaction in relation to the workshops. This study was done only with teachers. They attended the workshops and they were asked a number of questions. These are the most important results that we were given. More than 50% considers that the methodology is very useful and easy to use in the classroom. Expectations were quite high. However, we found that there's a significant percentage that does not use it after we teach them this. So then we said, well, why? And we started wondering, well, what's going on? So let me explain our thoughts in this regard. I also wanted to tell you about some of the materials that we have created for schools or a child audience. In 2013, we did a book called Water Ecology, Juan Ernesto and Anicia Hoffman. And last year, the Ministry of Education asked us for many copies to be distributed to all schools in Chile. This is an honor. This year, children received the book. And then we have another book called Illustrated Scientific Publications. The aim is to take scientific materials produced by Institute members and we see topics of national relevance, for example, the one at the top, biological invasions and paleoclimatology at the bottom. These are rewritten by us using the most interesting results. And also, we've invented fantasy headings. And we did this with national illustrators. And so, this is an illustrated paper, research done in Chile, which is very current and illustrated. And so, we've brought this all together in a format that, if you like, I can share with you because I have some copies here. And also, we have applied to an art fund in order to publish a native flora, a book on native flora. And this is important to us because it opens up different channels, both in terms of the distribution as well as the impact. Another thing that we did was books for children on research on native species. They're illustrated, they're very simple, but they are the result of research being done in Chile for many years, at Ticao and Tiroche. This is research done by researchers at our institute and that have been summed up with a lot of illustrations and published in the book. To conclude, what have we learned with these activities and these products that we have developed over time? As I was saying, the methodology is easy to use and apply, but requires of greater follow-up and support in the long term. That is what we have seen. We see that teachers don't really use it or replicate it as much as we would expect. So probably we require further follow-up, and also teachers are very much restricted by the ministry's curriculum. And this is an additional course. So how could you include it? We've also seen that it is very important to have an expert in education, or the teachers themselves, in order to devise this sort of project and materials and get them to fit in to school reality, which is so different to the reality at, for example, at our institute. Now, in drafting the editorial, we have seen that it is very useful and important to connect to publishers. For example, Manuta, that is helping us in relation to the books that we've done, and opens up different channels for distribution, quality, and scope, because it's not that easy for us to give them our material and say, well, what would you do with that? And they make a number of comments, suggestions, they change the cover, terms used, and well, we are giving in to their experience, but the result has been quite good. And to conclude, we believe as a program that it is very important to assess programs to communicate science. Not only assess this in terms of impact, how many people attended, or how many books we distributed, but really as to whether our aims are being fulfilled, that science be appreciated, that protection of biodiversity be appreciated. So, well, that is the final message. We need to really assess what we're doing. Thank you.